Southern Kitchen Essentials Part 1, the tomato knife.
This is a tomato knife. It's made specifically for slicing tomatoes. It's serrated and has prongs at the tip for picking up slices. The edge helps you slice through any fruit or veggie with the skin, like tomatoes, peaches, and grapes. If you try to slice them with a straight edge knife, you'll have to use a lot of force to get anywhere, and they'll roll all over your cutting board. Tomato knives slice through skins like butter with little effort. Plus, you can use the prongs to lift slices easily.
And y'all don't pretend like you don't know what those tomatoes meant. If you have a lot of cherry tomatoes you need to cut at once, this is the easiest way to do it.
Instead of cutting them individually, just place the tomatoes in an even layer inside of a flat Tupperware lid and place another lid on top. Use your hand to hold it in place while you cut through the tomatoes with a long serrated knife. How easy is that?
Have you ever wondered how to quickly chop an onion like a chef? I can show you how.
Cut off both ends of the onion and peel it. Place on one of the cut sides and cut the onion in half. Press firmly down on one of the halves with your fingers flexed upward and make 3 horizontal slits, cutting almost all the way through but not quite. Turn the onion and cut into 5 even rows, pressing on both sides so the onion doesn't fall apart. Turn again and cut in 5 rows again. The key to this technique is using a really sharp knife, having some confidence, and being careful with your fingers. With that simple trick, you get even-sized pieces in no time.
Ever annoyed by 1, how long it takes to break down a bell pepper, and 2, how much goes to waste when you cut off the top? I can show you a quick trick that makes it all really efficient.
Many people cut the top of their bell pepper like this, because then you can just pull off the top and the seed pod comes with it. However, you lose a lot of the pepper at the top. But if you cut through like this, you can simply pull off the green stem and then reach in and twist out the seed pod. Simply proceed either slicing or chopping, however you need.
You won't believe this hack for cutting watermelon. First, cut the watermelon in half. Then, to prevent the halves from wobbling, cut a small slice from the rind on each edge to give you a flat, solid base. Then flip the watermelon over and make 6 slices through the rind, about 3/4 of the way through the melon, being sure to keep the rind intact. Flip it over again and cut around the rind, angling the knife with the curve of the melon but not going all the way through. Then make vertical and horizontal slits to create cubes, being sure to not cut through the rind. Flip the watermelon on its side and boom! Cubed watermelon.
Does your celery get wilted and bendy before you can enjoy it? Well, I'm going to show you a trick to crisp it back up.
Place your wilted celery on the cutting board and cut off the bottom, take out the middle piece, and cut off the tops of the celery stalks. Cut the stalks in half and place in a container filled with cold tap water. Cover and put in the fridge for a few hours or overnight or a few days.
And just like that, after a few hours in the fridge, the celery is super crisp again.
You're probably organizing your fridge the wrong way. Here's the right way to do it.
The drawers and doors I'm sure you're doing correctly, but there's a safety protocol you should be following for the shelves. Ready-to-eat foods and drinks should be up top, followed by eggs, and then raw meats. Since chicken needs to be cooked to the highest temperature before serving, it should always be at the bottom in its own container. This method is easy to follow, and if you ask me, really satisfying to look at.
Want to know the one thing you need to save space in your freezer? A muffin tin.
To avoid long thaw times and waste, freeze small portions of items like soups, juices, milk, eggs, and oatmeal. Yes, you can do that in muffin tins until solid. Then store in Ziplocs until you pull out just the right amount you need.
This can opener hack is about to blow your mind. Turns out there's a better way to use this common kitchen tool. Most of us cut sideways from the inside of the can like this, but that can often lead to sliced fingers and lids you have to dig out with a fork. Instead, try cutting from the outside by placing the can opener on top of the can. Simply turn the knob to cut open the top and you'll find that it comes off cleanly with no leftover lid in one fell swoop. No fork digging required and no sliced fingers.
The easiest way to peel and devein shrimp requires one tool that I know you have.
Working from the head to the tail end of the shrimp, insert a tine of a fork just underneath the shell along the vein line. Use the fork to break the shell all the way to the back of the tail. You should be able to easily separate the 2 halves of the shell and remove the vein in one swoop.
All right, y'all. We got to get rid of the hairs on this corn. The first thing you need is a jar gripper, you know, one of these things you use to open jars. But if you don't have one of those like I did, just get a rug pad and cut the middle out. No one's ever gonna know. First, shuck your corn. Grab it so you can get almost all of the hairs, really they're called silks, in one in each hand, like half in each hand. And then pull it down as much as you can. This usually does a pretty good job of getting rid of the silks, but you're always gonna have some dudes that are stray behind. Standing over a trash can, take your jar gripper or the center of your rug pad if you're like me, and rub it along the edge of the corn for about a minute, just until you see all of the silks go away. Game changer, life changer, silk-free corn on the cob. Let's make some real cream corn. Now this is the real way to do it. Get out a corn creamer, a tool made specifically for creamed corn. It cuts the kernels off and then milks the cob so all of the creaminess comes from the corn itself and not some added stuff. Run the cobs along the corn creamer to release the milk and cut off the kernels, then transfer it to a pot and cook over medium heat until thick. Season with salt, then add a splash of cream and a good hunk of butter. Not too much cream though. Serve, top with chives. Oh, and it's also a great dipper for fried okra, trust me. Southern Kitchen Essentials Part 2, the bacon grease can.
Bacon grease is liquid gold to a Southern cook, and the best way to store it is in a bacon grease can. Some people prefer an old coffee can, others prefer a mason jar, but I like this can because it has a strainer at the top that separates the pure fat from the bacon solids. Store it in the fridge and use it in just about anything you typically use oil or butter for. I especially like using it to cook and flavor vegetables like squash, collards, and green beans, and it makes the best fried potato. Stop using a vegetable peeler. The potatoes are slippery and you're more likely to get hurt. Plus, it takes forever. Instead, cut a slit around the middle of the potato and place them in a pot of water. Bring them up to a boil and cook them until they're soft in the centers. Let them cool completely until you can handle them, and then the skins should peel right off. The secret to soft, medium, and hard-boiled eggs is all in the timing. Bring water to a boil and gently add the eggs. Some might crack while they're cooking, and it's totally fine. Timing for each stage varies. 6 minutes for soft, 9 for medium, and 12 for hard is my preferred method. Just be sure to immediately put the eggs in an ice bath when your timer goes off to stop them from cooking. Peel them when they're cool enough to handle. I find it's easiest to roll the eggs on a counter to loosen the shells. I love soft and medium eggs with salt, pepper, and Dijon or on salads, but hard make the best deviled eggs. Having trouble peeling your peaches? Try this trick. Make slits just through the skin in the shape of an X, then boil 30 seconds. Transfer to an ice bath immediately to cool completely. Peeling will never result in mushy peaches again. If you've got fruit flies flying around your counters, here's how to get rid of them. Poke small holes in the lid of a mason jar with a hammer and nail, then fill the jar a third of the way full with apple cider vinegar. Stir in a few drops of dish soap. The vinegar attracts the flies, but once they get in the jar, the soap weighs down their wings so they can't get out. Your flies will be gone in about a week. The microplane is my favorite kitchen tool. Here are 5 ways you should be using it. So yes, you can zest citrus, but if you're doing it like this, it's wrong. Instead, hold the fruit in your non-dominant hand and scrape the microplane on the zest with the other so you can see what you're doing instead of constantly having to look to see if you got the zest off. Don't grate hard cheeses on a box grater. Microplanes do it way better. While you're at it, go ahead and dredge your buttered bread and cheese the next time you make a grilled cheese, and I promise it'll be the best you ever have. Definitely grate garlic and ginger on the microplane to save time over chopping. And if you overfill an ice mold, you can give it a haircut by shaving off the excess. And last, but probably my favorite use for this kitchen tool, scrape off burnt parts of cookies, pie crust, or sandwiches. It's also a good way to get crumbs from these too. If you have another use for a microplane, let me know in the comments. I bet you can't tell a difference between these 2 sets of cookies. On the top, they look pretty much the same, but when you flip them over, one is way darker than the other. Here's why. Heat attracts to dark colors, so when you bake cookies on a dark sheet, they're gonna burn on the bottom before they even cook through on the inside. When you bake on a lighter sheet, they'll cook evenly on both sides and you'll have perfect cookies every time. If everything you bake just doesn't come out right, I bet you're measuring your flour the wrong way. Scooping flour with your measuring cup like this is totally wrong. Packing it into a cup by tapping, also wrong. Both of these methods cause you to put way too much flour in your recipes. Here's how to do it the right way. Stir the flour with a spoon to loosen it in the container. Use a spoon to spoon it into a measuring cup, then level it off with the handle of the spoon or a knife. Plus, if you do this over a piece of paper, it makes for easy cleanup and zero waste. The best way to incorporate butter into flour for making pie crusts and biscuit dough? A box grater. Who knew? Make your biscuits way easier by grating your butter instead of cutting it into cubes and then having to use a pastry blender that you probably don't have to incorporate the butter into your flour. Box grater for the win. Are you storing your butter the best way? To make cooking easier, I like to cut up my butter into tablespoons and store it in an airtight container. This way, I can grab just the right amount a recipe calls for every single time. Plus, save time and a few dishes in the process.
You should never throw away your butter wrappers. Save them in your fridge and pull one out when a recipe calls for greasing a baking dish. The leftover butter on the wrapper is perfect for greasing pans. Just keep a bag of them in your butter shelf ready to use anytime. This trick for lining your baking dish saves a lot of time on cleanup. When you're baking anything in a baking dish, even if the recipe doesn't call for lining it with parchment paper, you definitely should. Sometimes it's hard to spread batter in a pan with loose parchment, but if you secure the paper to the sides of the dish with clothespins while you spread it, you'll have no problems. Take the pins off before baking, then you're able to easily lift out the baked good from the pan using the parchment handles with way less cleanup. Trust me when I say this is an essential kitchen hack. Ever wondered if you can put aluminum foil in the air fryer?
You definitely can. Air fryers work by circulating hot air via convection, so foil is totally safe to use as long as you place it directly on the fryer basket where you place your food, not in the bottom of the actual fryer, just to keep the hot air circulating. The foil also helps ease the cleanup process too.
Yes, parchment paper is okay, just follow these steps.
Parchment paper is okay to use in most air fryers, but always double check the manufacturer's instructions. Never use parchment without food weighing it down, so be sure to measure your paper before preheating and only add the paper to the fryer when you add the food. Cut your parchment a little smaller than your basket to ensure more airflow. The paper will help the cleanup process for sure, but if your goal is super crisp, I'd skip parchment and foil altogether. If you have pots with stuck-on stains and smells, try cleaning it this way. Place your pot on the stove and fill it with vinegar, then cover and bring it up to a boil. Pour out the vinegar, scrub with a brush or sponge, then wash like normal with dish soap. The pot will be super hot, so use pot holders, but that heat will also help in the cleaning process too.
Folding chip bags is so 2020. My dad asked me for my hair straightener. He's bald, but then he showed me this trick. Cut off the original seal of the bag, then seal with a straightener. It doesn't leave any residue and it takes less than 10 seconds. I know y'all's thoughts on baking soda and tea, but what about coffee and houseplants? Adding a half and half mixture of room temp coffee and water fertilizes soil with nitrogen, potassium, and magnesium, so I let my plants have a jolt a few times a week.